right. Thank you everyone for joining. This is going to be a really great episode. Abdul, I see you. Rita, Trevor, I see you as well. Thanks for joining. We're going to be talking about AI's gateway to college. And the underlying tech we're going to be talking about is the context window. So if you actually don't know what the context window is, or you've heard about it and not really sure how it works, it's a really great episode to actually tune into.
When was the last time we did a really great show?
They're great, and then there's greater, then there's greatest, and just keep getting the greatest, the bestest. Hey, Shauna, thanks for joining.
Hey guys.
Abdul. Shauna. Yes.
Hey.
I think we've got the band back together.
All right, here we go, guys.
Hey guys.
Welcome to Season 10 of Airhead Institute, your 45-minute AI power-up at noon Eastern. This month, we are broadcasting live across all the socials and Zoom. If you're new here, join our free AI community to grow alongside other curious minds and give your kids a head start by enrolling them in the Airhead After School program. Here's March's weekly lineup. Mondays, we take the training wheels off securely in the Open Claw Bootcamp. Tuesdays, we explore bleeding-edge tools from Google Labs in Gemini Hidden AI apps. Wednesdays, we equip the next generation in AI Gateway to College. Thursdays, we uncover productivity and marketing tools in Hidden AI Gems, Starters. Fridays, we explore human purpose in an automated society in Humanity 2.0, No Jobs Edition. We're making AI practical, powerful, and accessible for everyone. No tech background? No problem. Whether you're a student, professional, or lifelong learner, just show up. Guided by your hosts, AI Junior and AI Johnny, we're keeping it bold, brainy, and built for real-world impact. AI won't take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI will. Don't get left behind.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Airhead Institute Season 10. Today is Episode 3 of AI Gateway to College, where we discuss fear of the workload surviving the syllabus. Your syllabus isn't a roadmap, it's a 10-page ambush. Most students treat it like the terms of a service agreement, scroll to the bottom, click accept, and spend the rest of the semester drowning in missed deadlines. Today we stop the bleed. In the next 45 minutes, we are turning that chaotic monster syllabus into a precision-engineered tactical strike. We're moving past basic organization into high-speed workflow mastery that buys you back your weekends and your sanity. To show you how it's done, I'm handing it over to Junior. I found him at 4 a.m. trying to out-memorize a neural network while fueled by nothing but Sprite and espresso. Since he's finally stopped seeing colors, he's ready to lead the way. AI Junior, bust a move.
AI Johnny, such a great intro. And you're totally right. My short-term memory is actually completely overloaded. It's actually really tiny. But here we go. Let's get down to business, guys. So welcome everyone. Think of this as an immersive language class. If I dropped you in the middle of a foreign country and said, "Hola, bienvenidos a la clase de inteligencia artificial," you would only pick up a word or two that day. But hang out around with us for long enough and you'll be able to speak the language in the future fluently. Join us daily at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and before you know it, you'll be speaking AI like a pro. If you're on Zoom, unmute and ask your questions real time. If you're on socials, there's a 30-second delay, so type your questions early. We are not ignoring you. Today, we're actually equipping the next generation and tackling real fears of college transition. This is great for high schoolers, freshmen, teachers, parents of teens, whoever is actually going to take on a college course. So we're focusing heavily on the executive function and using these tools to organize chaotic college students. AI Johnny, ready for the wow factor?
Let's give it the old college try.
All right. So guys, check this out. So the underlying tech I want to just highlight, I want you guys to keep this in mind. So even though this is actually a college prep episode, the tech is really important because it is something that we use all the time, and it's the context window. Okay, so keep that in mind. We're going to actually get into a little bit of deeper dive on the context window. So check this out. So let's say, for example, you have a 10-page syllabus here, and you can see it's a typical history syllabus, the global Cold War from 1945 to 1991. The kid's going to get this for the first time. They're going to have the grading scale. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys, right? So they have the grading scale, they have what they're going to be working, late work extension. It's a typical college level syllabus, right? University policy, weekly course schedule, right? Yeah, Johnny, this is standard stuff, right? It's nothing out of the ordinary. You actually have all your weeks all the way to the finals. You have the research paper grading rubric for 25% of the grade. It has a lot of details in here, right? Yeah, Johnny?
Very, very boring.
Very boring. All right. So what would you normally do is would say, hey, you know what? Read this over, try to understand it, and you'll not really understand what's going on, and you just get caught with an issue of not understanding what's going on. So check this out, guys. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and we're gonna go over to Gemini or a large language model here at Airhead Institute, and we're gonna take this this college um syllabus. Man, I had a brain freeze just a while ago. This college syllabus here. I'm going to take this college syllabus. I'm going to send this over to with this prompt. Yeah, Johnny, I'm going to drop the prompt in for those playing at home. So I'm going to read it for you guys or make it larger. The reason why it's very important is because I'm attaching my 10-page college syllabus for the semester, act as an expert candidate, academic advisor, and project manager, analyze this entire document, and instantly generate a color-coded week-by-week visual calendar. You must highlight the heaviest weeks in bright red so I know exactly when my highest level of workload will hit. So it's actually telling you up front that these are going to be your heaviest level, and it will be able to understand these things. So if I actually hit generate on that, it's going to go ahead and think. It's going to do all its magic. I've actually created one ahead of time just so we can actually see. And here's what it actually generated. It actually says, hey, project manager's critical alert, the red weeks. I have flagged weeks 2, 4, 8 in bright red. These are your heaviest reading loads based on page count and complexity of the assigned text. Specifically combine Westad chapters and dense. Again, I'm not a history major, so I really don't know. But if you actually see here, week 1 is moderate. Week 2 is critical load. It's actually telling you the issues that you're going to run into. Week 4 is a critical load. So you actually get ideas of what needs to get done, right? Week 8 is actually critical. Week 10 is light, right? Oh, week 14 is actually max load. We actually have a new color here. And finals week is max load. So yeah, John, it actually took in all of our content into context. It gave the student ability to focus on these are your heavy weeks. So either don't go to any parties that week, make sure you stay at home, grab that pizza and that Mountain Dew, and actually just keep feeding your brain with that history class, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
So what it did is it just saved you hours of panic and highlighters in about 3 seconds flat, right?
Exactly.
Week
Exactly,
4, it
AJ.
flagged a massive reading assignment in bright red, just like we asked. Students used it to literally cry over mapping this out, and it just held the entire massive document in its digital brain all at once to build a custom battle plan. So it is a
Exactly.
time saver, I can tell you that.
Exactly. And here's the thing that most people don't realize. They don't know the workload of what this means. Like if you think about this, right? Look at Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, most kids who are going to college, they probably have never even heard of Cuban Missile Crisis, but they can, because the AI knows how to pull additional information into its context. It knows that the Cuban Missile Crisis, it knows the level of detail, it knows the complexity, and it knows how to actually score it a moderate score. So what it does is actually it's pulling in a lot more data into its context window so you can actually understand and give it a difficulty or a workload scale. I see Abdul actually saying something in the comment. Let me bring that in. Abdul mentions that he is doing it for his master's classes. Gemini even remembers this context throughout the semester as I work. That is so true, Abdul. So, yeah, Johnny. So we actually get everybody on the same page. Let's talk about the word of the day, because if we get to the word of the day, everything becomes clear.
Exactly. The context window, well, the word of today is context window. The context window is AI's short-term working memory. It's the maximum amount of text, including your prompt, the attached files, and the AI's own reply that the model can hold in its head at one single time. If you have a 10-page PDF, you must have a context window large enough to fit it in. And what happens if the syllabus is 2,000 pages, but the context window is only 100 pages, Junior?
All right, so this is where a lot of people are actually going to either learn a lot from this class or, want to pay attention. So AI Johnny just asked a really great question is what if the syllabus was 2,000 pages long and what if the context window only hold 100 pages? If you look at this visual that we actually created for you guys is it's really like a jar or it is a container to hold things. As things flow in, it fills up, and at some point in time it's going to run out of space. So it only has two options. It's either going to say I am full, I cannot go beyond, or it's going to start to forget things. This is the part that we actually call hallucination. It's going to start making up stuff, right? So it's like pouring a gallon of water into a pint glass. The oldest information will start to spill out. If you run out of space, the AI forgets the instructions you gave it at the very beginning, or it forgets half of your documents, right? Which leads to a confused answers and completely missed deadlines. So that is the actual context window definition. Does anybody have any questions about the context window before we actually move on? Because we don't want to lose anybody on this amazing episode about context window, because a lot of people don't even understand what's going on. So we want to make sure we hit the nail on the head. Anybody have any questions so far?
My daughter, my 4-year-old daughter wanted some candy this morning in the car. And so she was asking me for candy, and it was a nice, small, concise request. I told her no, it's too early in the morning for candy. And then she said she wanted a donut, and I said no, you already had breakfast. And then she wanted to go to the store, and then she wanted to go to the trampoline park, and eventually, she filled up my context window, and I couldn't hear anything she was saying after that. Is that the same thing?
Unfortunately not, but I like that she confused you. I love that AI Johnny. Smart daughter. All right, so Abdul's actually saying also, are hallucinations more likely for older data, or can the AI organize and forget less important data? Abdul, you've hit the nail on the head. So behind the scenes, to answer this question, it is actually creating an embedding model internally for that context window, and it's actually throwing away the things that it thinks that you don't care about. And because it thinks that it doesn't care about, it has to save space. So it actually will throw away some stuff, and then at some point in time, when you're actually speaking to it later, it's going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Or it's going to say, oh, I think I remember, and pretend to actually remember what you said. But it's really trying to survive because that context window is a finite number of, has a finite space. So, Abdul, thank you for that question. So, let's go over to one little thing before we actually get into the deep dive. So, Abdul, again, thank you for that question. So, let's first explain context size. So, AI Johnny, I actually have one of my favorite LLM stats leaderboard here. I'll drop it in the chat for everyone to be able to go to. So, LLM Stats is a place that actually ranks large language models, their versions, and how good they actually perform on different tests. Okay, so we actually see here. So Gemini, GPT, which is Chat GPT. We have Claude. We have different versions of Gemini, Flash. We have all these versions. But what I want us to pay attention is to the column called context. So this context column right here, Jenny, you can see my screen?
I can.
Awesome. All right. So because we actually have this column, I want to show you guys here. This is the context. This is maximum input context length in tokens. Now keep in mind that just because you have input, you also have output. This is how much input you can actually put in. And keep in mind your previous conversations. So if I'm having a conversation, it also gets added as input as well. So all your previous conversations gets added as an input to that context window. So don't think that it's only just your current message gets added. The whole entire thing gets added every single time you chat. So Google actually tops the mark, Gemini, with 1 million tokens itself. Then you have, ChatGPT 5.2. Now with ChatGPT 5.2 Pro, keep in mind, nobody uses it. And the reason why nobody uses it is because if you look at the price per million input token is $21 for input and $168. Now, the reason why it's actually number two is because it's, I don't want to necessarily paint ChatGPT in a bad light, but it's actually gaming the system to say, hey, if I actually give it a really expensive model, I will get to the number second spot of the actual leaderboard. So that's what it did here. But theoretically, nobody uses ChatGPT 5.2 Pro. And again, 5.2 is actually 2 generations old. So again, don't necessarily want to look at this one, but they do have ChatGPT 5.4, which actually is reasonable. It actually has a 1 million context space. That is, again, in the reasonable ballpark. It's $2.50 and $15 for the output. And as you can see, if I get down, it's 400,000, 200,000, 1 million, 200,000. So depending on which model you're using, you're in the 200,000 to 100 to 1 million context size. So that's the size that you're working with in all these models, right? Yeah, Johnny, any questions so far on the sizes of these models?
Why would setting your prices really expensive automatically get you to the second spot on the leaderboard?
Yeah, because it's a computational math problem. So if you actually give it every single server that you have access to, somebody's going to pay for that computational resource. So therefore, if you give it a million servers to run that million servers to run your query, it's going to cost you $1 million probably. And then what happens is if you give it any math problem, it's going to be able to solve that math problem. It's going to give it, if you give it any problem, it's eventually going to solve it. But unfortunately, normal people will never get access to a whole entire data center to answer those questions. So it's this model is publicly
Clever.
available.
It's clever.
It
So what
is.
you're saying is nobody else is on there, and because nobody else is on there, you get more CPU time. And so your complex equations get solved a lot faster because you stand alone, but you also pay a lot more because you stand alone.
That's correct. So they carved out a really, really expensive model to be able to make it onto the leaderboards. All right. So love that. All right. Now let's actually get to the if we actually go back, right? So if we actually go back to the Abdul actually mentioned, so this is why they put ads on ChatGPT. Abdul, you're a little right on that. Definitely they're trying to make sure that they keep revenue positive. All right. So, let's get back to what we're talking about. So, with respect to the context window, let's say, for example, now you actually go back to Gemini and you say, "Hey, Gemini, I actually, want to be able to have a conversation." And as much as you keep talking, you say, "Hey, you know what? I don't like, I don't like this max load to be black because I can't really see it on my dark screens, right? So make max load be." Yeah, Johnny, give me a nice color.
Magenta?
Okay. All right. So make max load and make. All right. So we're gonna be able to just update it, and what it's doing is it's actually taking all of our conversations, going back to what it has, and it's gonna say, you know what, the user did not like the max color being black. We're gonna make it magenta. So if you actually see, if this was the color coded here, it was black, and we're gonna make it magenta. So hopefully we should see magenta. There you go. Max load is now magenta. And it actually took that. Now, if you think that the context itself was actually just a little bit of my texting here, that is not the case, right? Just because I actually said make max load magenta, you would think that's only the difference in context. No, it actually added the whole entire previous conversation. Plus, this also comes with it as part of its context. Now, that is separated as output, but everything goes back into the context window. All right, AI Johnny. So let's actually go into the deep dive because I want everybody to understand. Hey, Adrian, thanks for joining. We're talking about context windows here and context sizes. So AI Johnny, let's get into the deep dive here.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at the mechanics of a context window.
Yeah. All right.
And why the context window is so critical here.
Yeah. So let's check this out, guys. So what happens is if you look at the visual on the screen, we actually have a PDF document. And the PDF document is broken down into tokens, right? That's how the large language model understands and learns things. And those tokens, you can call it an equivalent of about a syllable, right? So if you actually have, a very large word, we break it down into syllables. The large language model breaks it down into tokens. So it's not exactly the same, but it's a good analogy to understand. It will take these tokens and put them into working memory inside an embeddings database internally, which is a context window. That context window eventually will then take those things itself and actually tries to figure out what's going on with things like the attention mechanisms. We're going to get into a little bit deeper. And then when you ask a question, it figures out what words are related. It will then say, hey, I see you're asking about, say, for example, what are the most important weeks? What are the heavy workloads? It will then figure out how to actually classify each of those weeks of work in the syllabus. And then using temperature, higher the temperature, the more creative, the lower the temperature, the more factual, it will then try to figure out what's the best temperature to set to be able to give you an answer of these weeks are the most heavy weeks, and these work weeks are the light weeks, and you need to color code it, and it keeps all of that, and it knows how to track everything because it's putting everything in its working memory. Right, yeah, Johnny?
Well, it's not only is it doing it, but it's doing it fast because it's coming out of the context window, correct?
That is correct. It doesn't have to go look up anything anywhere. It is probably doing some grounding by doing some Google searches or using some tools to go fetch things, but it is actually doing everything in its working memory. Really great question. Now, before we move on to the next section, I want to make sure that everybody understands so far where we are, because AI Johnny's next question, which we know AI Johnny is going to ask, is probably the most critical question that everybody who's using AI is going to ask. So does anybody have any questions first before we actually move on to the next section? Because if you don't understand anything I said, please interrupt and ask. What is this context window? What is happening with tokens? Why are we talking about filling up the context window? What is going on? So don't stress yourself if you don't know what I'm talking about, because the next step is probably the most important part if you don't understand it. So is everybody on the same page?
All right, folks. Well, if you thought that was complicated, we're now getting to the complicated part. So strap in. This is the part of the show where AI Junior nerds out. The answer to this next question is for advanced people only. So if you're an advanced person, go ahead and raise your hand. So don't worry if you don't know, if you don't know this stuff, you don't worry, don't follow along. So technically, AI Junior, here's my question. Why can't we just make the context window infinite? Why are we limited to a certain number of tokens? Take that question.
All right, guys. So here's the juicy part. So the question is, why can't we have an infinite context window, right? It all boils down to a computational math problem, right? So on the left, I'm trying to show a visual here, and we're starting out with 3 words. Let's pretend, for argument's sake, we only have 3 words to work with. When you do a 3-word thing, what the AI is doing is taking those words, and again, we don't use words in a large language model, they use tokens, but let's pretend we keep it simple for words. It's trying to figure out what's known as the attention mechanism, what is important to focus on. So the AI looks at every single word in your prompt, in your sentence, in the syllabus, in everything, and it tries to make a connection between every single word. Now, because of that attention mechanism, it needs to figure out which one is the most important word in that sentence. Then it also needs to figure out what the context is in that moment. Now, here's the thing. If you actually do the math on this, there are 9 connections in a 3-word, very small context window input. When you actually go double and you go to 6 words, you now actually go to 36 connections. It's actually not a linear increase, it's actually a squared increase in terms of context. So the more words you actually put in, it's not I'll just double. If I put 3 words, I should get, if I put 3 words and it's 9, therefore if I put 6 words, it should be 18. No, the math doesn't work like that. It actually becomes 36 connections. So now imagine just increasing, and computers are really good with doubling. Imagine increasing to the next tier. Let's say, for example, you want to go from 200,000 context window to 400,000 context window. It's not just doubling it, it's actually quadrupling it. And the computational power required to actually do all this is really expensive, right? So, AI Johnny,
This
go
is
ahead.
all metaphoric, right?
No, this is
If my
actually
small window says if my small window says I love you,
yep.
the computer doesn't make a list. You love I, you. You're just saying that as the numbers of as the number of words in your context window increase, the amount of computational power is comparable to an exponential squaring of numbers.
You're
That's what you're
absolutely
saying,
right.
right?
You're
Not
absolutely
actually linking every word to every word.
no, it
It's
actually
doing something
is.
else.
No, it actually is. It actually is. So let's say, for example, we talk about and my favorite sentence to probably use is, um, I have, I have a king. Okay. If I were to say to you, I have a king, logically, after just thinking about that sentence for a second, if I have a king, you would think, okay, he's probably talking about a chess, not necessarily speaking about, say, for example, Burger King, or actually, I own a physical king, right? It is actually figuring out every single word, how it relates to each other, and what is the context in terms of how is that word used. So as a human, we take this for granted that when we say the word king, it's just automatically understood. There might be some ambiguity there, but what the AI is doing is actually trying to map every single word and how it relates on a vector mathematical space. So there's multiple dimensions to try to figure out what does this word mean in terms of what the user is trying to say. So yes, there is a graph and a math problem being done for every single word. Does that make sense, AI Johnny?
No,
All right. So for you, the word king could mean Burger King, could mean king on a chessboard. It could mean a physical king or royalty. For you and
could
I,
be
that's only
me.
yeah, you're right. It could be you. So that's only three connections that you can see in your mind. But mathematically, the word king means a lot more things computationally. So that's why,
I get it. If the word dare you came before it, it would change it, right?
exactly.
If the word bishop came near it, it might mean it's a chess game. So I get it. The other words in the context window do affect every other word. I see where you're going with it. It seems like a overly it seems like it's doing too much work, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it does need to look at every other word and see if that other word somehow changes this word contextually, and do that with every word. Then if that were the case, then you would in fact have a an exponential squaring of the words. And if you had 1,000 words, then now your context is doing 1,000,000 calculations. If you have 1,000,000 words, then your context is now doing not 1 billion, but 1 trillion connections. If you have 1 trillion words, you have more words than there are in the universe, more connections than there are in the universe.
Yeah, it exponentially creates a problem in terms of computation. So they do all these magic tricks to figure out what goes on. So let's actually, so does anybody have any questions before for this specific example, just so you guys actually understand why not having an infinite context window is not possible right now. Again, right now we don't have the technology to be able to have an infinite, but you never know. In 2, 3, 5, 10 years, there might be better research and better models that comes out to give us potentially an infinite context, or theoretically an infinite context window. All right, so AI Johnny, your question is why can't we have an infinite context window? That's really the $1 million engineering question. So like I said, so under the hood itself, the AI relies on a highly advanced architecture. So the system uses transformers to process the sequential data that is in your prompt, in the PDF, in the image, and it relies heavily on this thing called the attention mechanism. So the connections, or how it actually, what words it should look at. So the attention mechanism looks at every single word and compare it to every other word in the context window to understand its semantic meaning. Now, here's, like I said, the limitation, right? If you double the size of the context window, the computational power required doesn't double, it actually squares. It gets exponentially more expensive and requires massive amounts of RAM. So if you exceed the context window, you drastically increase the risk of hallucinations because the neural network loses the grounding data and starts guessing what was on the page that it just forgot about, right? So this is why managing your tokens is probably one of the most important skill for an AI prompt engineer, because as you recognize what's actually happening under the hood and you see it start hallucinating, right, you can kind of understand what's really, really, really going on. It's not that it's lying to you, or it's not that it's making up stuff. It just doesn't. It's just trying to manage its token size, and that's just the way it is.
So the breakdown happens between the amount of processing power that you need based on the size of your context and the amount of RAM, random access memory. Is that what that is?
Correct.
So if you have lots of RAM, you can have bigger context sizes. So let me ask you this: do computers have greater context windows, or do humans have bigger context windows?
Yeah, Johnny, I'm not a biology major, but if I were to guess, I think right now, the computers are winning. But I think if we were to say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I think the humans would have the computers way, way, way ahead. But again, I'm not a biology major, so I'm just guessing on that
All right,
one.
wait. Maybe this is a question for Shauna. How big is God's context window?
Yeah, Johnny, that's a great plug for Shauna's Bible study on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be episode 3. I think it's called
Infinite.
the torn robe. Ah, listen to
I
that.
would agree. God has an infinite context window.
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. All right, yeah, Johnny. So let's get to the key takeaway. Does anybody have any questions with respect to context window, context sizes, and what's actually going on here? I know this is a little bit technical, but I wanted people to understand the underlying pinnings of how the context window, and why is it that my context size itself is so important.
All right, you ready for 3 creative business ways to use massive context window
Of
if you
course.
aren't a college student? Are you ready for that?
Of course, yeah, Johnny. Let's go.
Okay, project management. Drop a massive client contract in and have it map out all of your deliverable deadlines. Is that cheating?
Oh, no, I don't
I
think
don't think
so.
so.
I don't
I
think
don't think
so.
so. But you're using AI to get your work done.
Yeah.
Cool. Content creation. Upload a 300-page brand guideline and ask it to generate a 12-week social media content calendar based on those rules. Just a little friendly social media marketing with the little assistance from Gemini. And finally, human resources. Feed it a messy employee handbook and have it create a streamlined onboarding schedule for a new hire. Man,
Yeah.
just time saver after time saver. We're going to eventually have all of our time back, brother.
I hope so. I hope so. So just want to focus a little bit on these business ones, right? So I know we're focused on, the theme for this month is college and education and preparedness. That's the theme for this month, which is why we're using these educational based examples. But keep in mind that there are a lot of reasons why you would need a very large context window, right? So things like carrying the conversation on multiple times is very, very, very important. As Abdul actually said earlier at the top of the show, he starts out doing it in his master's class. And then as the semester goes on, he continues that conversation so that it actually remembers exactly what happens. But keep in mind that if he goes to blow out the context window, the AI will eventually start to drop things. And that's where we see hallucinations just start to pop up. So it's actually managing this context window really well. All right, on the technical side, so having massive context window, it's really important for things like code repository analysis. So you're not actually just looking at one particular file, you're looking at the whole entire Git repository, or if you're using, another kind of source control management system to be able to look at the entire code base, understand, map out things like API endpoints, and just understand what's going on. Another thing is log parsing, so you can feed it raw server logs to instantly highlight and categorize anomaly events. A lot of us developers are really guilty of only looking at logs when there are errors. A customer complains, and that's it. But sometimes it's really good to be proactive. Hey, we actually see some anomaly happening in the logs here. Is somebody trying to hack my system? The AI can parse that log file and understand what's going on and maybe alert you proactively instead of being reactive. Another thing is data extraction. So you can actually use it to scrape unstructured data. So things like from financial PDFs, or your outputs of your JSON, you put them into clean output JSON arrays, anything you want specifically that you have to organize a lot of unstructured data, take them in and then be able to spit them back out. So those are a few examples of how you can actually use those in a way to be able to take benefit of this massive context window.
Man, what used to be work is now just stating it.
Yeah.
Let there be light.
Funny, yeah.
Let there be JSON. Let there be PDFs and JSON arrays that hold all of this data that is clogging up my hard drive. Behold.
I love it, yeah,
I
Johnny.
know. Getting back into Shauna's Bible study. Let's get to the Q&A, brother.
Mm-hmm. All right. Does anybody on the Zoom chat does anybody on the Zoom chat have any questions? We want to give you guys priority first for be able to ask questions about context window, context sizes, and what's going on. Or if you want to ask questions about the college stuff, you definitely can do that as well. But we want to make sure we actually focus on just today's topic. All right. Does anybody in the live chat have any questions? Yeah, Johnny, does any questions in live chat?
I've got one from a freshman who wants to know if he can get in trouble for using this to organize his syllabus. I think I know the answer to that one.
Yeah. So the answer is no. You're not gonna get in trouble for organize your own schedule and having it read your list, and it's your own executive function. So being able to do a thing, you're not turning in anything. You're just understanding and organizing the information that is presented to you. So this is not anything academic dishonesty. You're just doing the reading. The system is simply acting as your personal admin assistant to help you along. Also, the Supreme Court just ruled, that they're not even going to hear the case of AI generating material in terms of copyright. More to come later on that. But practically, the Court has agreed that if you use AI, to be able to do some derivative work, it's practically you're able to do your own thing. So again, more to come on that. That's actually unfolding now. So just wanted to mention that a little bit. All right, yeah, Johnny.
No, that makes sense, Junior, because if I use AI, then the output is at best a made by both you and the AI. The AI couldn't have done it without your prompt, and you couldn't have done it without AI. So
Yeah.
AI doesn't own it.
Yeah.
You do own it. So the company that made the AI or whoever would be bringing a case against the person that used AI, it's not really fair. I think that one's going to go in the way of the people. The other thing I want to mention about this particular question is that, schools are starting to open up to the use of artificial intelligence in education. It used to be no AI at all. It's too easy to want to cheat and so on. And so now they're asking, at least in some schools, they're asking you to provide the prompts that you used so that they can see if you used a prompt that was too general, where you really did ask AI to do work, in which case it really is plagiarism or cheating. But if you're just asking it to help you, like in this case, help you get organized or help you formulate a thought or to grammar check this or spell check this or make it more concise or whatever, none of that's cheating. It's no different than using a spell checker or a calculator, in my opinion.
I completely agree. All right.
Ready for another question?
Yep, I see Shauna reacting. Thank you, Shauna. All right, yeah, Johnny, go ahead.
Here's a technical one. What do I do if my textbook is 800 pages and completely maxes out the context window?
Yeah, so there are quite a few solutions. Now, keep in mind, I want to give a little bit of history on this question. So when the context, believe it or not, when ChatGPT first came out, they only had about 4,000 tokens, right? Well, when I said the popular one, right, it was a 4,000 token system. Now imagine only having 4,000. We're actually up to, in Gemini, we actually have 1 million tokens now. So we've come a long way. Now, when we were actually dealing with 4,000 tokens, 8,000 tokens, 16,000 tokens, 32,000 tokens, be able to put in just a simple 10-page PDF document was impossible. That was not even what was even a thought, right? You couldn't do it. So what it would do is it would actually transcribe the text. It would try to summarize it and put that into context window and then ask your question. So back then, when context windows were so tiny, what would happen is they created a architecture called RAG, that's retrieval augmented generation. What it would do is that would you break up your larger file, and it will break up your larger file and then chunk it and say, this section is talking about, say, for example, the Civil War. This section is talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. This section is talking about, the World War II. And by doing that, if you were to ask a question, say, tell me about the Cuban Missile Crisis, it will then know that the Cuban Missile Crisis is actually in the chunk that says Cuban Missile Crisis. It will then fetch everything about the Cuban Missile Crisis, forgetting about all the other chapters, and then answer your question based on that. So what it was doing was RAG was doing, it was trying to solve the small context window problem. So by doing that, if you ask a question about the Cuban Missile Crisis and ask about World War II, it could not actually do it. It would say, you know what, I'm going to prioritize just the Cuban Missile Crisis and forget everything about World War II because it couldn't hold it in memory. Now, fast forward to today, where we have 1 million context tokens, we can fit an entire textbook into actual context window. So systems like RAG, where you break up the data, doesn't logically make sense at the consumer level anymore. Now, what happens is when you get to enterprise levels, you still need RAG because you need to be able to break up terabytes of, knowledge. So to answer your question is, if you have an 800-page document, you have two options. Try it in one of the larger language models that allows 1 million tokens, which Gemini will fit 1 million tokens easily. If you go to Claude, they only do 200,000 tokens. It will not necessarily fit for a long conversation. So your only option at that point is to break up the actual book into pieces. So you can take the first half of the book and say, here's the book. Then you can ask questions, but only about the first half of the book. Or you can actually break up the second half of the book and say, hey, this is the second half of the book. Talk to me about the second half of the book. Or your last option, if you're technical, you could actually build your own RAG or embedding system to break up that content so you can actually go figure it out. But it's a little bit more expensive for you for that thing. I see Shauna actually has her hand up. Go ahead, Shauna.
Yeah, I was just curious. I know you mentioned Gemini has about 1 million token and Claude 250, something like that, thousand. I was curious about Copilot. Perchance, do you have that information? What the
Yeah,
context window is like?
great question. So Copilot actually is one of the large, let's call it the chatbots or the thing that doesn't build their own large language model. And actually, Microsoft took a very different strategy. They actually leverage other large language models. So we do know for a fact that that Microsoft is actually has contract with actually two large language model, but they may actually be using others. So I do know for a fact that they are using OpenAI, right? And they are also using Anthropic, right? So if you actually look at ChatGPT, if they're using ChatGPT, they're anywhere from 400,000 to 1 million tokens. If you look at the Anthropic models, Anthropic itself has about 200,000 tokens for their Opus 4.6. Now, depending on how you're actually using it, the mixture of experts itself may actually route it to a different large language model. So unfortunately, you may not know which one you're using and what the context size is. Great
Is
question.
Copilot paying these other large language models to use their systems?
I would believe so. I know OpenAI has a nice contract with Microsoft because they were one of the early investors. And then I do know that Anthropic is actually partnering for at least their Office suites to generate their PowerPoint and kind of visual workflows. So that I'm aware of.
Such a deal.
It is. It is. It is. All right, yeah, Johnny. Any more questions, Shauna? Thank you for that. I see Shauna said, "Yep." Also agree with yeah, Johnny there. Love it. Shauna, you have your hand up again. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one more question. So does that mean that Copilot then would have more than the others because they're tapping into like Anthropic and something else, or or is it just hard to tell?
No, so there is no aggregation in terms of so you can't say because I'm using 4, I get 1 million times 4. No, you only get one at a time. So you're either using one large language model to answer your question. So if you're, say, for example, using Copilot and it's routing it to ChatGPT, you may be actually getting a 400,000 context window, or if you're getting more expensive one, you might be getting a million context window. You just don't know.
Understood. Thanks.
No problem. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Yeah, Johnny, go ahead.
We have a question here. It's actually more of a concern about the future of humanity when machines start taking away all of our work. If the machine does all of our planning and organizing, will the next generation lose the ability to manage time themselves?
I want to be cynical here, yeah, Johnny, because this is the first time in 5 generations that a report has came out that we've lost IQ points in terms of this generation. So to be cynical, I want to be hopeful for humanity. I do think that if we continue down this path, I think it's going to free us up to actually do higher level critical thinking. That's my hope. But the data itself is showing that we're not getting smarter critically as a whole. Now, there are certain people who are staying ahead of the curve, but just like how the calculator didn't destroy mathematics, it allowed us to focus on advanced engineering, automated scheduling. I think there's going to be a separation of groups of people where some people are actually going to use it to their advantage. So everyone in this class itself is going to use AI, leverage it, and become smarter. And I think there's going to be a group of people who just not necessarily use it to their advantage, and their cognitive ability and IQ and those type of things will probably follow the trend that they're seeing with the decline in IQ in that segment.
Intelligence quota. Isn't IQ itself an antiquated term now? Shouldn't we be measuring people's IQ combined with their CPU?
Yeah, Johnny, I love that. I love that. I love that. All right, guys, we're actually almost out of time. Let's go ahead and go to the news. Shauna says she's not surprised by those stats. Yeah, it's actually crazy, Shauna. All right, yeah, Johnny. News we can use.
Anthropic announced a new institute. Anthropic has officially launched a new institute dedicated to studying the long-term societal impacts of powerful automated systems, focusing heavily on safety and ethical deployment. Right up our alley, brother. Gemini, context windows expand. Google recently announced massive expansions to their context window limits for Gemini advanced users, making it easier than ever to analyze entire code bases or multiple textbooks at once without dropping information. That's cool. Again, Gemini is our LLM of the month, and we're very focused on Google tools this month, so that news is timely. And Rakuten AI 3.0 powers Japan. The Rakuten Group has open sourced its latest massive model, Rakuten AI 3.0, aiming to democratize access to advanced locally optimized models and reduce dependence on English-centric architectures. English-centric.
Love it, love it, love it.
All right, what an incredible show. Personally, the second we sign off, I'm taking my entire tax document folder and dropping it into the top context folder to map out my filing deadlines before I get audited. Tomorrow, we're going to shift some gears. We're making sure you tune in for Thursday's class, Reloom Wireframing in Seconds. We're going to show you how to rapidly build sitemaps and website structures. You don't want to miss that. Junior, take it out.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, these AR classes are completely free live. You can always ask your questions on Zoom or on the live stream. Sign up for a free account at airheadinstitute.ai and RSVP to all our classes and support us by becoming a paid member. It's only $40 a month. And since today is Wednesday, don't forget we actually have Airhead After School and AI Office Hours from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you're an AI Pro member, see you guys tomorrow. Bye guys. Thanks, Shauna.
That wraps up today's AI Power Up. If you joined late or you're new here, welcome to Airhead Institute. This is your daily destination for mastering artificial intelligence. We designed this lineup for everyone, whether you're a technical pro looking to upskill or you just want to chill and learn something new on your lunch break, we've got you covered. Our classes evolve every single month, so you're always on the cutting edge. And the best part? It's totally free to join. Once you're in, you can get live tips on your AI projects in our AI office hours and even enroll your kids in our Airhead After School program. Scan the QR code to join the community right now and make sure to like and subscribe at Airhead Institute on all socials. Guided by your hosts AI Junior and AI Johnny, we're here to help you win. Remember, AI won't take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI will. Don't get left behind. We'll see you next class. Bring a friend.